Hello friends and welcome. 7.33c just came out, and although I cannot see the future, I'm going to share my analysis on it, what I think is going to be the highlights of this patch, and how the game will change. First off, XP for supports should be getting noticeably better. I don't know if it's like game-changing better, but it should be a lot better for us. So 3 big changes here. First off, the Wisdom Rune is now going to grant XP to the lowest level hero on the team, as well as whoever picked it up. So if the offlaner had to pick it up for whatever reason, like the enemies were trying to steal it, they get it, and then let's say the 5 is the lowest level, the 5 position is also going to get the XP. So before, each Wisdom Rune was worth 280 XP, let's say at level, or at minute 7, the very first Wisdom Rune, right? So now it's technically worth 560 XP, but it's 280 on one hero, 280 on the other hero. If, say, the 5 position picks it up and they're the lowest level, it's going to go to the second lowest level, which is probably the 4 support. So in most games, this XP is going to go to at least one support, if not both, and I think that is great. This does mean I think Wisdom Runes are actually even more extreme. So like if both teams are splitting XP runes, then great. We're both getting more XP. We're both happy. But if your team, say, steals both Wisdom Runes at the beginning of the game, instead of like a 560 XP swing, it's now 1,000 XP swing for your team. And I think that could be a pretty big deal. So I think there's going to be even more emphasis put on Wisdom Runes here. Next, we have the Observer Ward, now giving 20 more base XP per D ward, plus the scaling changes from 6 per minute to 8 per minute. And this means as a support, as you spend time like doing your warding duties, not getting XP from the lanes, if you find a D ward, you're going to get more XP for that. And then finally, while you're doing that, perhaps you're stacking, you will now get 30% of XP from the stack. Whoa, I'm so excited about this. This means when you're doing this stuff that pulled you out of the lane, like the stacking and the dewarding, you're still going to be able to get XP so long as someone finally does the stack. But like when that happens, you're going to get a huge chunk of XP that we never had before, and I'm pretty excited about this. To show you some numbers on that, I showed you this Excel XP table before in a different video, but I'll highlight the new stuff here, which is that these are the average values for neutral camps, so the gold and the XP, and then when you stack them, whoever kills that stack actually gets a reduced amount by a little bit. So like the killer gets this amount of gold, this amount of XP, and now whoever stacked it gets 30% based on the default values. So let's say they kill an ancient camp, I get 50 gold. And now we're adding in 30% XP. So imagine your support and you do a double stack, right? Maybe you stack the ancient and the hard camp. That is about 150 XP that I never would have gotten before. And now if I do like a medium and hard camp stack, that's about like 80-ish XP, right? The more stacks you do, and some heroes are better at this than others, right? But when you do the stacks, you're going to be rewarded for it. And I think this will be really impactful in the early game when you see the most stacking. It's going to be several hundred XP for certain supports. And I think that's a big amount, because if you remember the video where I talked about this before, they essentially changed it from like minute 10, you used to have about 810 guaranteed XP for at least one support, and with all the changes we're talking about, right, we're getting 280 from the Wisdom Rune, relatively guaranteed, now that as long as your team secures 1, probably you and the other support are getting it, and then you're getting however much potential XP from stacking. If you haven't been stacking, then maybe you're not getting this, but when you do the stacking, right, let's say you're getting another 200 XP from this, plus any D wards you're getting. Let's say you get a couple extra D wards, right? You might be getting like an extra 100 XP there that you never got before. And of course, as the game goes on, you know, more numbers change, blah, blah, blah. But at least for the first like 10 minutes of the game, hitting that level 6 timing, I think there's tons of new sources for supports to have a more consistent level 6. And if you're playing really well, maybe get even further ahead from the enemy. Because in the same way, if someone stacks and you steal those stacks, they never get this like gold. Like the support spent their time stacking and they don't get the gold when the enemy steals it, and now they're not going to get the XP either, which means when you kind of make these aggressive plays to hurt the enemy, it's going to be even more impactful. Moving on from support XP, the Tormentors will reflect the damage to the hero no matter where. So in particular, this is like the Enchantress cheese and the Techie's cheese. So you have to honestly fight the Tormentor. There's no, going around some sneaky way. I mean, I'm sure we'll figure out a couple more, but it seems like, we got to honorably fight with the Tormentor and we must come out ahead. Cleared multiple tree paths. I think this will be really nice. This is kind of a quality of life thing, but some tree paths look like You know, you could go through there and get through, but then you couldn't, and you're like, oh, what am I doing? And I got to walk around. So apparently they've moved stuff around. I haven't looked too hard at this yet, but I definitely experienced this where thinking I could like walk through a tree line and then like I can't and I'm stuck. So this will be really nice if they really have worked through a lot of them. The hero bonus attribute points can now be skilled starting at level 6. I'm curious about this because I don't think many heroes ever did this. If you didn't know, you can put skill points in attributes. I actually suspect this is like an anti-self-griefing measurement. If you accidentally leveled up attributes instead of skills in the early game, that could be extremely bad. So I kind of feel like that's what this is, because I can't think of any heroes that did choose to have attributes instead of skills at this point. There were times in the past, and maybe I just haven't seen it. Maybe some core heroes do it, but now you can't, I guess, until at least level 6. Next, Universal Hero damage became from 0.6 to 0.7. To show you some math on this, so this would have been the old scaling, this would have been the new scaling. So this is for all attributes. So say you get an Iron Branch, you get 1 in all stats, so that's 3 stats total. So in the past, that would have been 1.8 damage, now you get 2.1. I assume that damage is the same as stats and it rounds down. So like if you have 2.5 strength, you actually have 2 strength. And so damage, if you had 1.8, you might actually just have 1 damage. And if you had 2.1 damage, you now have 2, which means all your Iron Branches technically give you an extra damage than before. Double value, everyone buy Iron Branches, not fully quite there, right? Because actually, as you add Iron Branches, you would get over that threshold of the, being reduced down. So it's not like you're always getting double the value. So say, for example, you buy 2 circlets and 3 Iron Branches. That is 7 stats, 7 all stats in total, which is 21 total attribute stats, which in the past would have gotten you 12.6 damage. Now you would get 14.7 damage, so 12 to 14. So you are getting more damage per stat, obviously, because we're going from 0.6 to 0.7. But it's maybe not as game-changing as you might think. But as you get later in the game, say you have a total of 200 stats, which is, fairly level through the mid to late game, fairly common in the mid to late game, you'd be getting about 20 extra damage. So this will build up. It's not going to be some crazy difference in the early game. And in fact, many of the Universal Heroes had their base damage adjusted that you'll see later. So that the early game is about the same, but as they scale, they will be getting approximately, let's say like 10 to 30 extra damage as they get in there. So like if you had 100 in all of your different stats, 30 extra damage here. Moving on into item changes, a lot of these are small buffs and nerfs, so we won't read into everything, just balance stuff that you might expect from a C patch. But some of the highlights, some of these really strong auras are getting nerfed, so like Boots of Bearing, 200 extra gold, Crimson Guard, 125 extra gold, and 75 more mana to activate. Pipe of Insight, some nerfs to the stats, but then 50 mana to the activation cost. And although this one-time cost may not hurt like all that much, when you think about how frequently you have to use these, like you use it in a fight, wait a little bit, have to use the next fight, wait a little bit, use next fight, right? Let's say over 3 uses, right? That's 150 extra mana for the Pipe of Insight, 225 for the Crimson Guard, and a lot of times these aura builders are strength heroes who don't have the greatest mana pool, so that is going to hurt them. They're going to have to be a little more selective with how they use these auras or how they use the spells to save the mana to make sure they have it for the auras. So it will hurt these items, which have been extremely popular right now. Sentry Ward getting 100 extra range. This is very nice. With the map getting a lot bigger, sentries have a reduced amount. It's really hard. It's still going to be hard, honestly. But this will help catch a couple extra cases, make like this Radiant Small Camp really hard. Like you gotta like place the Sentry Ward exactly on point to make sure you get the whole box. But 100 extra radius means you've got a lot more leeway to shift it around a little bit now. Ooh, actually, I just realized the hard camp might be a little easier as well. I mean, it is going to be easier. I don't know if you can do it like if it reliably with one ward, but that'll be something I got to check out after this. But either way, 100 extra range will be nice to make it easier to cover some of these much bigger maps that we've got. And then Vanguard getting nerfed as well on the damage reduction and heal, just because this is also a very, very popular item for many offlaners right now. I was literally about to make a neutral item tier list on Monday, so I'm glad the patch came out now. Now, most of these are just like buffs, actually, to the weakest neutral items, and there's only 2 nerfs to the Van Brace and the Spell Prism, but those were very strong items, so I think that's fair. But the rest of these, just some buffs to make them a little more popular. Some of these were really at the bottom edge, and I think this is nice because that way it feels like the neutral item choice is very impactful. You get whatever you're trying to like fill out. So I think some of these will become more viable. Some of them were still viable. Like Trusty Shovel, I think was fine, but now it's only 40 seconds. Oh, we got to dig up even more. So I think a lot of these will now become more viable, and it doesn't feel like you get screwed where it's like, oh, I really want this item, and if I don't get it, I'm kind of, out of luck. Now it feels like, okay, if they're all kind of good, right? You kind of adapt to the game no matter what you end up with. So I like that. They didn't change as much as I thought they might with the heroes. It seems like a small buffs and nerfs to a lot of heroes, right? But kind of the bigger ones only to the most popular or like the weakest ones, which I think is fair, especially with the gameplay updates to general stuff, right? That might already affect what supports are popular, and what supports are popular affects what cores are popular. So maybe they're just like holding off to see more of that. But some of the bigger ones who did get touched are Alchemist, who has been very popular. It just felt like he was just generally strong. He's supposed to be this greedy hero, but then it also felt like he could fight pretty early. So just kind of getting nerfs to a lot of stuff, nerfs to his greed, nerfs to his fighting stats. But I think he'll still be okay. 1, because he's just a good hero with this change. But 2, I think supports are more encouraged to stack right now. And so the more stacks there are, heroes like Alchemist are quite happy. So we'll see where he falls out. I think we'll still see him. Beastmaster is a hero like I thought he would get touched. Bounty Hunter, this nerf's honestly not that bad. I think he'll still be fine. I thought Chen was strong and he didn't really get nerfed. Crystal Maiden did get hit with a slight nerf to Crystal Nova, but I don't think this is the biggest deal. I think she'll still be a strong hero. Obviously, marginally weaker, but overall I think she'll still be fine. Doom was really good. He's getting nerfed in his early Devour Gold by the 4th level. It's pretty much the same, but this will slow down his timing to I don't know if he'll still go Vanguard now that I got nerfed, but the items he was going for, right, he hit them a bit faster than other people, even when he was having a bad game, because of the free gold you get from Devour, and so hurting that in the early game is going to slow down his timings. DK got a base attack time. I don't know if that'll change that much, but base attack time is one of those stats that is very impactful, so we'll see if this leads to some, like, Dragonite carries or something. Earthshaker got a lot of nice buffs overall. He really got hurt by the stuns being reduced, I feel, and he really dropped off. So 200 extra range on Fissure is really quite nice, and then just overall buffs to everything else should help him out. Invoker was not having a great time in the last patch, and he got overall a series of buffs, but the main thing I want to call out here is that the Tornado travel distance was 800 at level 1 Wex, and now it is 1,500, which is quite different. So I do want to call that out. I think it's going to catch quite a lot of us off guard. Keeper of the Light was really good. His Blinding Light, I think, is easier to use in the lane than Illuminate, so his laning stage was more consistent. He's really good at stacking, which I think is still going to keep him in the meta. And then his Endless Supply of Mana did get slightly nerfed on the talent, but overall is still going to be very good in this meta right now, I believe. So I think he'll be still fine. Maybe not, very top of the support meta, but fine. To good, and then Legion Commander, very popular offlaner, just all around nerfs to several of her spells. More Lion buffs. I don't know when he'll reach like top of the support meta, but we're getting there slowly, buffed every time. Medusa. Now, this is one I'm just gonna have to feel out because I don't know if the numbers really mean anything to me quite yet. But Mystic Snake getting a higher cooldown, of course, in the laning stage, and then the mana shield being changed a little bit. So the return from mana to damage is worse, and the extra mana you get from this shield is less as well. So the big difference here is that at level 1, you used to get 200 bonus mana, and now you're down to 0. So I think that's going to hurt her early game the most, but I don't know by how much exactly, because she was very overtuned. So I don't think she is going to be nearly as busted anymore, obviously when you get nerfed, right? But I think she might still be okay, and we're just going to have to see. This is all very new to many of us, so I don't fully know what these numbers truly translate to until we just see it in a game. Nyx still gonna be able to dagon people. Let's go. Keep doing it while you can. Oracle. These nerfs aren't the end of the world. It is gonna be painful. Like sometimes you want to max You always want to max E first typically, and then sometimes it's like Fate's Edict next, and if you do that, you're sticking at a level 1 Fortune's End, which is now going to be 3 seconds longer, which could be quite painful in the wrong games. And if you do max this one first, like, you're losing Fate's Edict, which also got a mana buff. So when you leave it off at a value point of 1 on Fate's Edict, it is 15 more mana than it used to be. If it's max level, it's the same as it was before. Pango's been extremely popular in the mid lane, and he's going to lose 300 dash range on Swashbuckle. This is going to make it easier to punish him level 1, level 2, 3, that area when this cast range is shorter than it used to be. I think by the time you get level 3 Swashbuckle into level 4, right, you won't notice it as much, but those early levels could jeopardize him. This used to be his way. He runs in and gets out. Now, some people might be able to catch up, 300 less range. And then they made his lucky shot proc every single time. I don't know why they did that, but yeah, I think this will still hurt him, so we'll see. Phantom Lancer, not that much of a change, to be honest, so we might still be dealing with a lot of PLs, but I think he did start to drop off compared to other heroes, especially someone like Medusa kind of took over. She was just really strong, so I think PL will still be in a fine spot. I honestly thought he would get nerfed a little harder. You probably saw a lot of Ricky, or maybe you didn't because he's Ricky, but did get some nerfs. I think he'll still be fine. Sentry change, maybe is bad for him, but I don't think 100 extra sentry radius is going to be the end of the world for Ricky, so I think he'll still be overall fine. Silencer, Skywrath, Slark, all very popular heroes. They've been nerfed. Spirit Breaker, some pretty big buffs here across the board. Some I want to highlight. First of all, he can bash more frequently from 1.5 to 1.2 seconds. He'll be doing more damage. And the Nether Strike, now this is the big one, 20 seconds off at all levels. I think that's really big. This is a really strong spell, in my opinion. Now, technically a nerf, but also just technically the way this ability was supposed to work is that Charge of Darkness in the past was unable to target people who were BKB'd. Then we did that BKB change, and now you could target those heroes who were using BKB, but you're not supposed to be able to, I think, and so that is now, canon. You're not supposed to do that. It's not a bug. It is intended to not work, and you will need the Aghanim. So that part is a nerf to this hero, but I think everything else he's getting looks like an amazing buff to this hero. So I'll definitely be trying out more Spirit Breaker 4. Another mechanics change will be Terrorblade, who, just like the Spirit Breaker charge, you weren't supposed to be able to ult BKB targets. Then they changed BKB. Now you could ult them. You wouldn't change their health, but you would change your health. So say you're at 30%, they're at 100. You would go up to 100, they would not drop to 30. That was kind of weird though, and I don't think it was supposed to work that way, and so now you just can't use it on debuff immune enemies anymore, so that is a nerf to Terrorblade, and it's going to prevent him from just getting all this extra health even when people are BKB'd fighting, and that will be, I think, pretty significant. It can be like the game-deciding fight, where before he would get 70% extra HP to work with in that fight, and now he can't unless a non-immune target walks up to him. Fiend's Gate is going to cost a 100 extra mana. That's pretty crazy. That's going to hurt his mana pool. He's already a bit mana starved, especially with now all the auras getting some mana increases as well. So I think that's actually going to hurt Underlord quite a lot. But maybe we'll still see him because his auras and his mobility with the ultimate is just very powerful right now, it feels like. Vengeful Spirit, I thought would get more of a buff. Yeah, I don't know. She has 3 more level 1 damage, I guess. But thought there would be more. Venomancer, hurt 4 damage off at level 1. I think he'll still be okay. He was pretty good. I am sad, of course, to see him nerfed at all, but I think he'll still be fine. If you want to play Venomancer, go ahead and play him. And in fact, Pipe getting harder to use is actually a buff to him, technically. So that's good for us Venomancer players. Void Spirit, extremely popular mid laner, and he's getting just nerfs across the board, which I think is good, and especially 5 damage off of his level 1 is going to be painful for someone who, 1v1, very skill-based. That's where your damage kind of matters the most, in my opinion, compared to the other core roles where you have like supports helping you out too. And the 1v1 mid, losing 5 damage at level 1 is pretty painful. But of course, he does eventually ramp back up because of he is a universal hero now. He's going from 0.6 to 0.7 scaling, so eventually he'll be fine. But if his laning stage is hurt, and then of course his just other elements of gameplay are hurt, we should see him drop down a bit. Final thing, it's not in the patch notes, but it is on the website. Ranked matchmaking. changes, so Immortal Draft will no longer happen until you're ranked 6,500 or higher. I'm pretty happy with this overall because I do think ranked roles worked well enough, and matchmaking quality really dropped since Immortal Draft came in. I don't think it was necessary for low-level Immortals. I hope they'll still change it with some of the suggestions I had in the past video or other things, because I think it still needs some work overall. And apparently MMR changes will be calculated a little better. So that's all I've got for you for now. Let me know if you think I missed anything major. I will be playing, of course, and let you know any changes I see. In the meantime, I will probably be trying heroes that stack well or steal the XP rune as support. That is, I think, some of the bigger changes for this. And we'll have to see how a lot of the auras getting nerfed works out, because now maybe people will go for different items, and that'll change like the feel of the patch. But of course, as I figure that out, I will let you know, so stay tuned for one of those videos. Thank you. I will see you there. Bye.